Right, it's 11 o'clock. Good morning, everybody, and a warm welcome from a very chilly Johannesburg. It's wonderful to have you on board again for another Women in Sectional Title webinar. We'd like to again thank our sponsors, ZD Fin, which is a smart finance for community schemes, CIA, building insurance specialists, Meeting Pal, which deals with virtual meetings. It's an app. We really appreciate also the support of BCM Track. They deal with management for schemes and with software, and also sectional title solutions, which deals with adding value to properties, and that is smart technology, energy efficiency, and advisory services. So thank you for all of you who are really continuing to support us here at Women in Sectional Title. We truly, truly appreciate it. Today we're talking about navigating the relationship between trustees and the managing agent. And basically, I've got a presentation for you today, but it just seems to be a little bit problematic. I'm just going to ask my secretary to sort it out. 1 minute, sorry. Thank you, Lola. What would I do without you? Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, so we're talking today about this navigating the relationship, and it's a tenuous relationship between managing agents and trustees. It's fraught with complications, and we need to look at the roles and responsibilities of trustees and managing agents, about improving relationships, and also we're going to take a look at the international perspectives. So, I mean, ultimately, there's so many managing agents who've registered. We had 150 registrations today, and most of them were portfolio managers. So you will understand that this is almost a grudge purchase. It's like attorneys and clients. We don't really take it personally. People need us, but they don't specifically want us. So it's always going to be this tightrope that you're walking as a managing agent to sort of, just to be in the good books of the trustees. And maybe those trustees are not the people who were on board last year. Maybe you wrote a nasty letter to somebody who's become a trustee now, and they hold a grudge forever against you. So these are the complexities and the history, and you've got to put this relationship in context. So how do you keep the stability? How do you just keep this relationship moving? Well, let's look firstly at who is who. Okay. Look at the roles and responsibilities, firstly, of trustees and managing agents. Okay, so the trustees, we know, hold this fiduciary responsibility and a position. It's a position which is taken out of the Companies Act, and it's in terms of Section 8 of the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act. So it says each trustee of a body corporate must stand in a fiduciary relationship to that body corporate. And without derogating from the generality of the expression fiduciary relationship, it implies that a trustee's got to act honestly and in good faith towards the body corporate. They've got to exercise their powers for the best interest of the body corporate, and they mustn't act out of or exceed those powers. They've obviously also got to avoid material conflict between their interests and that of the body corporate, and can't receive economic benefit directly or indirectly from the body corporate or from any other person. They must also notify every trustee of the nature and extent of any direct or indirect material interest. Okay, so it's quite important. You've also got the obligations of the, sorry, let's just go back there. You've also got, when it says it's regulation 2, it says the obligations of a community scheme executive in terms of that subsection. It doesn't derogate from the fiduciary obligations of the scheme executive. And we're looking now where it says scheme executives in terms of regulation 14 of the Community Schemes Ombuds Service. So we've dealt with trustees in terms of the Act, but in Sectional Title Schemes Management Act, but in terms of the Community Scheme Ombuds Service Act, we also say, we talk about a scheme executive that must take reasonable steps to inform or educate himself or herself about community schemes, its affairs and activities, take reasonable steps to obtain sufficient information and advice about all matters to be decided by the scheme executives to enable them to make conscientious, informed decisions. So this is really, they've got to exercise an active and independent opinion, they've got to exercise due diligence. So this is really placing another burden on the Community Scheme Ombuds Service. Before we go on to a managing agent, I just want to go back. Trustees also, you know, a lot of people have said to me, but where do we actually see what trustees can do? What are they allowed to do? What are they not allowed to do? And there's nothing in the Act which says, there's a section and it says trustees, if you go into the Act, there's nothing there. So where do you find it? Well, we look under Section 3, 4, and 5 in the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act. Section 3, 4, and 5 talk about the functions, the powers, and the additional powers of the body corporate. So that's what puts you off, because you think it's the body corporate who has to deal with that. In the meantime, in Section 7, it says that those functions and powers are delegated to trustees. So there are about 20 functions and about 8 powers that are set out very clearly in terms of what trustees have to do. All right, so you've got, let's just consolidate that. You've got fiduciary responsibilities of the trustees in terms of Section 8. You've got the powers and functions in terms of Section 3, 4, and 5. And then you've got this Regulation 14, which is a magnificent regulation for you to send out to your trustees as managing agents and for trustees to be able to understand that it's up to them. This is promoting them. The fact that it's termed scheme executives, it doesn't mean the word trustees being substituted or changed. It's just another word for, you know, sort of consolidating trustees and directors of homeowners associations. Okay. All right, so we've got that. Then we go on to managing agents. And managing agents in terms of Regulation 1A of the Sectional Titles Management Act says any person who provides these services, etc., for body corporate for reward, whether monetary or otherwise, and is employed to render such services. Okay, so managing agents, we've got definitions in both the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act regulations in terms of the management rules and in terms of the Community Scheme Ombuds Service Act. There's a definition for a managing agent. So it's quite clear what you do. And the important thing is that managing agents are contractually appointed by trustees to perform specified financial, secretarial, administrative, and other management services under the supervision of trustees. And then you have Management Rule 28.5b, which says that's where, you know, you get your legal source of authority. And we know that the appointment is for a maximum of 3 years. Okay, so we've talked about the contracts. Let's just go into that a little bit deeper, because I think that is a really, really important side of things. Okay, although the law has changed and it doesn't mention that this contract between the managing agent and the body corporate must be in writing, it should, for all intents and purposes, be in writing. You should record it in writing, and it's important to include the clause in that contract. The parties acknowledge that this agreement shall not be construed as a delegation by the Board of Trustees of their powers or those of the body corporate to the managing agent. The buck stops with the trustees. The managing agent is simply a service provider acting on behalf of the trustees. At the end of the day, the contract sets out terms and conditions, expectations, sets boundaries. If that contract's not right, and I can tell you, there have been so many times when I've seen managing agents just want to grab a building get the building, clinch the deal, sign the contract, and let's move forward. You've got to take time as that managing agent to go through the contract with the people, see that everything is set out in detail, because at least there are no gaps for anybody to be able to say to you, listen, well, you didn't tell me that you don't do this or do that or whatever it is. So annexures setting out the terms and conditions of the appointment need to be attached to the contracts. And we need to talk about a couple of things which I think it's important to do. And when I went through one or two of the contracts from my managing agents, I realized that managing agents really, really do have a tough job. Trustees also do. And I always say, when somebody becomes a trustee, I always say, condolences, in a jokey kind of way. But actually, I know what's ahead of them. So both parties have got great responsibility on their shoulders. And I think that's often why there's a stress, where there's a fractious kind of relationship. It's tense because you've got these responsibilities. But I think it's ever so important to just understand where your responsibilities and your role lie. And this is going to be in the contract. And I was saying, when I read this, I realized, geez, managing agents here, you can't be a sissy if you're a managing agent or portfolio manager, because there's a lot. There's a huge amount. You've got to deal with so much. People expect a lot from you. And I think it's just to hone those expectations. This is what this is all about. Hone the expectations. So let's look at, from an administrative point of view, and I've got a contract in front of me from one of my managing agents. You're operating the trust account. You're assisting the trustees with the determination of replacement values. This is now in an annexure to say what your duties are. You're handling insurance claims, right, on behalf of the body corporate. You are assisting them with maintenance on the common property. You're negotiating professional persons. Maybe you coming to us and you've got to negotiate a quote from attorneys with the body corporate. You are collecting levies, or you're receipting levies, and then you've got to go and do all the debt collection for that as well. The payment of wages, this is all part of your admin function. You must be authorized to give authority to others, for example, to issue summonses and take things further from a real levy collection point of view. And you must prepare reports and statements to submit to the Board of Trustees if necessary. That's just the admin side of it. Let's go into secretarial. Secretarial is a whole meeting story, organizing AGMs. And not only have you had to organize AGMs, but you also, you've had to become creative in light of a pandemic that's hit us all, and look at virtual meetings and online things. You've got to type up the minutes. You've got to store the minute books, sort out the rules, look at the permanent records. You've got to create those indexes like the Act says to keep everything nicely in order. And you've got to, not only that, you've also got to assist and guide those trustees about all the procedural stuff on the meetings. I know I'm telling you what you already know, but for me, this was actually quite enlightening to see it all in one place. Proxies, dispatch notices, keep records on with auditors, and then also accounting. What about the accounting processes? Now, all of a sudden, you've got to, align yourself with auditors and start speaking finance to auditors as well, keeping books of record and accounts. And then you've got Poppy also. Just to add things, you've got Poppy, which hopefully you're all compliant with and up to date with. I think we completed about over 400 Poppy policies for our buildings, and I think there's still people flocking in to get their Poppy policy sorted out. Limitations. So limitations also interesting, because I think it's important to put that in the contract. What are the limitations? Are you going to supervise contractors on common property? Are you going to supervise employees or not? Are you only going to do bookkeeping, or are you going to become a facilities manager? Are you, how are you going to show in that contract what you do? Do you work on a Saturday, a Sunday, a public holiday? Are you a Jewish firm? Will you have an AGM on a Friday? These are things definitely put them into the contract so that nobody can come back and say, well, you should have done this or you should have done that. Also, if you are going to provide additional services, so you're going to go to the ombud and you're going to help people with the ombud, or you're going to, you travel, or you only do one trustees meeting a year, for example, if you're going to go to other trustees meetings, you need to tell them that you're going to charge for that, or that you're going to charge petrol, or whatever it is. Don't leave any stone unturned. Really important. Okay, let's go into the legal relationship between trustees and the managing agent, because that's important in the appointment and termination of services, because there's also a lot of drama involved with that. So the appointment, we talk about Section 4 of the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act, and that where we say the body corporate's got the power to appoint agents and employees. Section 7, these powers are then delegated to the trustees. Termination of managing agents, that's where the most trouble is caused. And if you want possible trouble, the trustees can, by ordinary resolution, cancel that management agreement, but it could be liability. You know, if it's not correctly terminated because there wasn't a breach of contract, you could always get the managing agent coming back and filing, you know, some sort of damages claim. The best way is obviously to terminate that relationship is by way of a special resolution giving 2 months notice. But bear in mind also that your contract will determine exactly what that relationship is, and make sure that that exit is as clean as possible, because you're going to, if you're a managing agent, you're going on to another building. If you're trustees, you're going on to another managing agent. You know, you don't want to create bad reputation for either yourself or as the trustees for your building, in that you have these kind of awful relationships with people. So who gives instructions to whom? Let's see, because often we don't know who's in charge with managing agents and trustees. And we always get, so often we get people saying, well, you know, it's the managing agent's fault because they didn't tell us, or they didn't guide us. First of all, trustees can't act alone. They can't act alone. But you and I, we know about that chairman or chair lady who thinks they run the complex by themselves, and who thinks the trustees will just okay every decision. Decisions need majority vote. If they decide on whatever actions are taken by majority vote, and that decision is then communicated to the managing agent to implement and to enforce. So we can invalidate any action taken by one trustee who is a lone ranger who thinks that they run the show. Managing agents, we also know, provide guidance and legal information, and that's very important to understand as well. Provide the guidance. So how far do you go to provide the guidance? Big expectations out there. Let me read you a letter that I received from one of my clients. He actually sent it to a managing agent. Let's just call the managing agent X for now. As I'm sure you are aware, X has a legal obligation to manage our scheme with a required level of professionalism and care. This includes advising the trustees in a reasonable and responsible manner in all matters relevant to the scheme that you are requested to assist with, including the imposition of new conduct rules. Why have you not advised the trustees about the recent ruling at the Community Scheme Ombud Service that deals specifically with the imposition of new rules in sectional title schemes and the legal tests or principles that must be applied in order to ensure that any proposed new rules are legal and will pass constitutional muster? Since you have presumably made no attempt to advise our trustees in a responsible manner regarding the aforementioned ruling, I will do so. Okay, obviously the tone of that letter is not correct, and we'll deal with tone and how to be discussing things with people. But that's really, I'm getting the distinct impression that people are expecting this kind of professionalism and guidance from managing agents. And there's a greater burden on managing agents to be up to speed. And I think the reason for that is because there's so much information out there. Very easy for someone with a lot of time on their hands to go onto the computer and to look up something and then whack you with it at a meeting. And they do it quite gleefully, I might add. It's with quite a lot of smugness and glee that they attack. So I suppose the best way to avoid that is to be ready and to be obviously on the ball and on top of things. Also, legal information. A managing agent can absolutely give out legal information. You do it every day. You send out whatever whatever the act says, whatever the law says, and you kind of give your opinions, but you need to be very careful about not putting that out in a way that you're giving legal advice, because the minute you do that as a portfolio manager, you're opening up your managing agency to damages claims. Should you say anything, my legal advice is X, Y, and Z. In a recent case in America, and I'm actually happy to send it to anyone who's interested, a lawyer went out for lunch with his client. And the client just off the cuff, wasn't a consultation, but the client asked him for legal advice regarding a deal that he was getting involved in. And on the strength of that legal advice, the client got involved with the deal and subsequently lost millions of dollars because of the advice. And he successfully sued. Okay, I know the Americans are litigious, but he successfully sued the lawyer for giving him that advice. And their law society in America basically said that that lawyer should be sued and needed to pay out a couple of million, because you can't give off the cuff legal advice. It must be properly done in writing, etc., etc. So just be careful that you're not holding yourself out to be given legal advice. Setting boundaries early. So this is both parties. Now we're not talking only managing agents, we're talking trustees as well. You also need to set your boundaries. Nip unacceptable conduct in the bud very, very early. I mean, I've always said, I even say to my daughter, you teach people how to treat you. So at the end of the day, if you don't take telephone calls after 5 o'clock, make it very clear. If people have a very bad way of speaking to you non-professionally, or their tone is incorrect, set it straight in a very nice professional way early on. And I know that it's difficult for our younger managing agents to do that. It's very tough when you're being attacked by somebody older. You need to show respect, but at the same time, there's a way to speak to people. And if you don't sort that out very early on in your relationship, then it's not going to go very well for you. I think also, apart from the contract, set out a list of practical expectations, so almost like a standard operating procedure. And there you can say, well, how long will it take you to return a phone call? How long will it take you to return an email? How long is it going to take you to send out your rules? I mean, it should take you 5 days. How long is it going to take you to send out documentation? Should take you 10 days, but never overpromise and underdeliver. As trustees, also go and meet with a managing agent if there's a problem. Meeting face to face is much easier than having this sort of keyboard warrior approach where you send things like this in condescending kind of way. Because for my clients who are managing agents, there's nothing worse. And I made a few phone calls to managing agent clients before hosting this webinar, and there's nothing worse than condescending attitudes, that you're a managing agent. So many people have said, well, they think we're just a managing agent, and that's incorrect. No, that's not the correct attitude. I mean, you guys, you handle assets valued at millions. And you need to value that. So yeah, teach people how to treat you. 3 C's. These are the 3 things that are quite problematic, actually, that I've found as well. And the first thing is contractors. This is from expectation levels from trustees and managing agents. Who deals with the contractors? Is it going to be the trustees who need to phone the contractors once the quote has been obtained? Is it the trustees who are going to have to wait for contractors to come on site? Do they think you're going to do it as the managing agent, as the portfolio manager? That must be sorted out at the beginning. Communication is key. Channels of communication, also key. You can't have a trustee who's going to phone you 100 times a day. It's just impossible. I mean, I know you probably do, but I wouldn't put up with that at all. At the end of the day, put things in writing, both sides. Get everybody to talk in writing. I mean, maybe once or twice when it's reasonable, you can get a call. That's all, that's fine. But communicate in writing, you're creating a paper trail. Nobody can say he said, she said. Don't take instructions without just drop me a mail, please. Just drop me a mail. And with trustees, communicating to the managing agent what they're doing wrong. Maybe we don't like the way you deal with this. We don't like the way you deal with that. Talk about it. Talk about it. There's one thing that we lack in this world, communication skills. And again, control on site. What are you expected to do as a portfolio manager? Do you have to go and change the globes at the common property and the corridor? I mean, what is expected? Put it in writing. How do you feel about me inspecting the property as a portfolio manager once a month, once a year, twice a year? Do I have to even go to the property? Many of my larger managing agents don't inspect the property at all. They're building managers that do that. So get that clear. Okay, let's talk about international. I always find it interesting because then it feels like we're not alone, and it feels like things are actually better. So let's talk about a book by E. Mackenzie called Beyond Privatopia, Rethinking Residential Private Government. And he says the entire institution of common interest housing rests on volunteer directors, yet they are unpaid, untrained, unqualified. Most people buy into condominiums without fully understanding what they have bought or the rights and responsibilities associated with their property ownership. So they basically, the gist of this book as well is that education is going to minimize issues between trustees and managing agents. What about mandatory training? We've always said trustees, as soon as they hit that position, boy, they need to start training. So in Florida, in 2017, they started with mandatory training and they said, right, within 90 days of becoming a trustee, you need to do a half-day training course in order to be a trustee, or you can sign a really onerous document to say that you understand everything and that you're up to speed with everything, and you could be sued on that document then if you don't do the right things. In Ontario, they said also 2017 mandatory training within 6 months of becoming a trustee. I think that's too long, actually. I think within 6 months, a lot of people have done a duck because they've realized what the job entails. So early on, I think as a trustee, we need that here. Definitely. And we'll speak to the Community Scheme Ombud Service about that because I foresee that happening where the Community Scheme Ombud Service undertakes that function to actually start training trustees for them to get that certificate. Goes without saying, provision for training must be in the budget. Must be in the budget. If it's not there, that's wrong because at the end of the day, it's crucial. In Sydney, your municipalities have stepped in and they provide the Strata 101 free seminars to the public. And I know for a fact, because I liaise a lot with the Australian guys, that they still do this. They also do workshops for the redevelopment of a sense of community, mentoring and advocacy through informal networks for city residents within high density living. I mean, wouldn't that just be marvelous if our municipalities could do that? That's a bit of a sore topic for me at the moment, so I'm not even going to go there about municipalities. All right, so what we want to say here, are people happy with their managing agents? And in this international sort of study and a survey that is talked about, we talk about the New South Wales, America and England, and these surveys were conducted over various years. And in New South Wales, 27% of people were dissatisfied. In America, 22%. And in England, where you've got a leasehold kind of situation, 66% of people were dissatisfied with their managing agents. So we've got a lawyer in British Columbia who I'm quoting now from the book. It says, the quality of management is poor in my estimation. It's sloppy. Although we introduced licensing here in 2006, the licensing regime deals mostly with financial regulatory matters rather than quality of service. So the quality of the strata or condominium property management industry is, in my view, substandard. All right, well, that's what he thinks. Let's just go on. Why the dissatisfaction? Why the across the world, across the globe? It's not only here. South Africa hasn't had that survey, but I wonder what you think the survey would be. Are people satisfied or dissatisfied? And why the dissatisfaction? For me, the main reason actually is expectations don't meet. Minds don't meet. Expectations are different, and that you can sort out in the contract. But it's basically the experience and qualifications really of both trustees and managing agents. I mean, if we talk about trustees, they're not up to date. They're not up to speed. Most of the clients I spoke to said their biggest frustration is that trustees don't understand sectional title. And then they argue with them all the time. There's this wasting of time arguing about what the law actually is. For trustees, no further education, no reading interesting articles or training. For managing agents, it's not being up to date. Also having scarce resources. I mean, if you're not technologically up to date with everything, you don't have things at your disposal, you don't have the support of your agency maybe. Development programs, so essential. And this is where we really, as women in sectional title, are trying to push. We're wanting to give bursaries and give better development programs, also on things like softer skills and mindset and being assertive in the workplace, that type of thing. Also dealing with too many buildings, they're just swamped. A lot of managing agents, portfolio managers are trying to cut costs, and they're swamped. So how high is the bar in the rest of the world? Well, look at a few places, very, very different. I mean, in Hong Kong, it's difficult to get a job as a condominium manager without at least an undergrad university degree. In England, Massachusetts and Quebec, anyone can be a condominium manager. And it's quite similar to here, which I think is changing. And I think we spoke to Vita Wilkins from the University of Pretoria, and we've got one of her videos up on our on our website. And that was so interesting because that talks to you about the professionalization of this industry. Okay, so why the dissatisfaction? I've told you about expectation levels for the contract, the experience and qualifications on both sides, and then the cost. Trustees are looking for cheap managing agents. I mean, that's not on at the end of the day. And managing agents, why are you undercutting each other if you are? That's also not on. It just leads to poor service, and we just go lower and lower in terms of what's expected. I mean, education doesn't necessarily translate into improved quality of service. It really, really doesn't. And I think that's what we need to get right. So if we look at a summary, and from a cost perspective, I just want to talk a little bit more about costs. So we know that managing agents on very low margins, and we've got a quote in the previous slide you can have a look at. I will send this presentation to anybody who would like it. In fact, I'll send it to the entire database of who registered. But managing agents work on low margins. So basically what that quote is saying is that they go into other things to make money. So they're going to real estate, they're going to management, or they're bringing different services and things like that. And that dilution dilutes the quality of service in some ways. So be quite proactive about your costs. Don't reduce costs. And I think that's part of the summary that we are going to speak about now. So let's just go through the summary. Trustees, take your position seriously. I think many trustees just think, well, they say, what is a trustee? What is it? Take the position seriously if you're a trustee. Understand that legislation is prescriptive. It's not a guideline. You don't just do it, only how you think it should be done. Get educated on the fundamentals. We've spoken about that. Don't bombard portfolio managers. I mean, isn't that really, really important? Don't bombard portfolio managers. Have a set channel of communication. And I know that the admin and getting letters and all these emails, that can really, really just waste your time. Always set reasonable timelines and communicate them. maintain a respectful relationship, and treat the portfolio manager with dignity. All about dignity and mutual respect. Isn't that just how everything is in life? It's all about mutual respect, how you speak to people. Give credit where it's due and publicize to owners. So it would be lovely for trustees, if you're listening, to send something out to say, well, you know, Mari, our portfolio manager, has just been on a course or a workshop, and it just goes to show how interested and how professional she is, you know, something like that. Just, it's all about marketing as well. Don't push for discounts or lower fees from managing agents all the time. You know, you get what you pay for. And that's something to remember. Distinguish yourself, you know, as a managing agent, distinguish yourself from a cost perspective. Charge more, but be good. Actually, don't be good, be brilliant, be impeccable, so that nobody can say, well, why are you charging such high fees? Nurture the relationship with portfolio manager and head of agency as a trustee. So going for a cup of tea, going for a cup of coffee, don't always moan. Make sure and make a conscious decision that you're not going to moan. And then, of course, never shout or swear at anybody. It's not necessary. That we should all know. But I know it's surprising how many trustees actually get so upset and so agitated with managing agents that they get into that space. And again, a managing agent never has to put up with that. And your principal should be the one stepping in and protecting you against any of that type of thing, because it's not on. All right, from a managing agent's point of view, we can get away with 10 points here. So obtain the very best qualifications. Get curious about your job. Get curious about things. Treat it as a profession. And I know all of you on this webinar, and it's fantastic that you've all taken the time to come and to learn. So that's the first step. Value your worth. Value your worth. Too many portfolio managers that I know personally do not value their worth. And that's a life skill that you need to develop from my, as a suggestion from me, assertiveness training, anything that builds you, even from a sort of spiritual point of view, being quieter so that you don't get so cross so quickly, don't get angry so quickly, don't reduce your fees, and charge for things that are additional. Don't be scared to do that and to convey it. Add value all the time, add value. Build in pricing for marketing and training. Marketing is so valuable and important, because if you don't market what you're doing, nobody knows about it. And you can be plodding on and doing your very, very best and thinking you wonderful. What's outside? What's the outside perception? Do they think you're wonderful? Rethink your structure. So managing agents, I think a few of you might have heard me say this before, but overseas, the structures are not the same as they are here a lot of the time with managing agents. Maybe it doesn't work to have one portfolio manager per building. It's time to kind of step back and look at things a little bit differently. To have one portfolio manager who's dealing with everything in one building. I mean, they might not be the best with people. You know, they might not have a good people manner. Maybe they're good at finance, but they're really, really bad at running a meeting, for example. So placing various people onto one building could be better. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I'm not a managing agent. Maybe it wouldn't work. But just start rethinking, re-looking at this business of, you know, one person per building. Check your contract. Is it good enough? I've seen managing agency contracts where there's really bad spelling mistakes. It doesn't look good. It's unprofessional. They don't cover things. So get that checked out. Put professionalism first. Never shout. Don't lose your temper. And that's another thing. You know, there's a lot of places offering courses on how to speak to people and how to be, you know, little tips about when you speak to people on the phone. Smile, because then they'll be able to hear it in your voice. If you're speaking to a difficult person, stand up, because then it helps. It just helps you feel a little bit, you know, your sort of collarbone is open, your neck isn't so tight. You know, those kind of tips and things like that. Easier said than done. Hey, I know, sure, some people I could honestly murder, never mind speak too nicely. Okay, improve your soft skills. definitely improve your soft skills, improve your sort of bedside manner with trustees and even interpersonally, and be impeccable on the low-hanging fruit. And what does that mean? I think what you can do really well, you need to grab and you need to do really, really well. So for example, things like marketing to the trustees that you've got your fidelity cover, that you're compliant from a corporate governance point of view. Push that into their faces. Make sure they know about it and make sure that they know you take that seriously. What about things like insurance matters? Are you on top of your replacement values? Do you have a good relationship with the insurance companies? Show that you've got a good relationship. At Zoom meetings, Zoom people in from the insurance companies to chat about it and see that you're really up there from a professional point of view. The low-hanging fruit, things like meetings. Own the meetings. I can't tell you how many people have come to me and said, listen, I was at an AGM the other day. And quite frankly, the portfolio manager who ran the meeting was completely out of their depth. As a managing agent, as a principal specifically, you can't be sending people out who don't have the requisite confidence, because there goes your reputation. So the low-hanging fruit is to make sure that your guys are up to speed. Let them practice AGMs. It might even be easier now virtually. But let them practice, let them get good at what they're doing. So that's really it. I think it's quite a lot. I think that we definitely have a couple of minutes for questions. If anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask a question, you're very welcome to do so at this point. We've probably got about 7 minutes left. Anybody? I'm just looking at the questions. Yeah, look, everything's expensive. 1 p.m. can only do so much in a day, says Nico. I mean, there's a lot. The thing is, you need to look at your costs. So I think if your costing structure is correct, you need to build in money for those additional things, for your marketing material. I mean, I know I was talking to Serena, and Serena was talking to me about putting together some sort of induction pack. And an induction pack is a great thing. When the new trustees come in, you would say to them who you are as the managing agents. You would put all the details of all the people, the contact people at the managing agency. Serena, are you here? Sorry, I can't see. If you are, can you unmute yourself and just chat us through that a little bit?
Hi. Yeah, I think sorry, we must be already. You went and caught me off guard, Marina. Yeah, I think basically it's interesting that when new trustees come on board, and they always do after every AGM, you get questioned and asked to do things that maybe you now feel out of your comfort zone, because you're dealing with a board of trustees. You've always been dealing with them in that way. Now new trustees come on board and expect a far different level of service that perhaps your contract includes. So I think the first thing to do is to give them a copy of your contract. Any new trustees that come on board, a copy of your management contract, basically introducing everyone in the firm so they know who to contact for levies, debt collection, AGM, budgets, and so on and so forth, so that not every, like you say, not one person is inundated with all new questions. And then just basically to outline, we got something from Shirley Bailey, which is quite useful. It's about a 7-page document or so, and it just outlines the different relationships that you can expect. It's like a triangle between trustees, managing agents, and owners. So what can be expected from owners, trustees, and managing agents, and how the relationships interlink. And I think having that and also sending them maybe the legislation that pertains to body corporate in terms of what the executive committee are supposed to be doing. Because often trustees come on board, like you say, they have no idea what sectional title's about and what's expected of them. So
Thank
I
you.
think that's what my
Thank
take
you,
on it.
Sue. Thank you. Great. Sandy, Sandy Lodder, your hand is raised.
Hi, Marina and Shirley. Thank you for that. Sorry, Serena. Thank you for that input. I just want to point out managing agents are in fact undervalued, but trustees are also undervalued sometimes as well. So I just want to commend the work that managing agents and trustees are doing, especially those who know what how it works and who's been around for a while. So I think we just need to emphasize to the owners, it's not about trying to save the body corporate money. It's not about trying to cut corners and whatnot. And I feel very strongly about this, especially this year going forward. We have to stick to our stance. Managing agent needs to be paid their dues. Same with any contractor, because you find trustees going, oh, this is too expensive. Can't you reduce about 1,000, 2,000, or whatever the case is? And you're eating at their bread and butter at the end of the day. So ultimately, we have to also educate the owners and tell them this is how it works, and we have to do that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Sandy. And Caroline would also like to say something.
Good morning, Marina.
Morning.
Marina, just a couple of comments. I think, first of all, there seems to be just a general complete misunderstanding of roles and responsibilities, and people not understanding that, first of all, that the owners are the body corporate. I mean, I often come into contact with clients who say the body corporate made a decision on XYZ, where these would have very specifically needed SGMs with either unanimous or special resolutions, but it turned out to be trustees and managing agents who made these decisions on behalf of the body corporate without going through due process. But that's just a comment in terms of owners' misconception around the trustees and managing agents being in charge of the scheme and not taking, or having an understanding of them actually being the ones that are appointing the trustees and making sure that qualified trustees are being appointed to look after their assets. That's more of a comment. But what happens then is that the roles and responsibilities between the trustees and the managing agents, and this is not a generalized comment, there are some brilliant trustees and excellent managing agents, but unfortunately on the extreme opposite side of the scale, there are incompetent managing agents and trustees who are, who are making decisions on behalf of body corporates which are causing more mayhem than they are supposed to be, the good that they are supposed to be creating for the body corporate. And it comes down to a number of issues in my view. First of all, managing agents, or many should I say, are not taking the time to be trained and treating this as a profession. As you mentioned, they're looking after people's assets that are worth millions of rands, and they are making decisions which they think is the law, but not necessarily the case. Trustees are putting their trust, should I say, in these managing agents to make these decisions because they think the managing agents know the law, when often they don't. And then it becomes a blame game. Oh, the managing agents are saying they're taking instruction from the trustees, and the trustees are saying, but the managing agents are managing the scheme. And you've got trustees and managing agents who are actually acting outside of the law, which they are supposed to be protecting. So the trustees should be signing, I think they should be signing acknowledgement forms when they are appointed trustees, that they understand their fiduciary duties, they understand the SDSMA that they are protecting, they understand that they are instructing the managing agents in line with the Act. And they understand the parameters and limitations of what their act are. And in terms of the managing agent's role, they cannot be blaming the trustees and saying, yes, but the trustees instructed, because they are still obligated to act within the parameters of the law. They cannot make decisions which fall outside of that law. So, at this point, we know that the managing agents are required to have a valid FFC, which minimum is an NQF4 with EAB, but the content of that is very different to the role that a managing agent plays with
For
regard
sure.
to managing.
For
And you
sure.
know, that is where the compet or the channels that are supposed to be holding these managing agents and trustees accountable need to be doing that. The training needs to align with what their output is supposed to be. And you know, there's this thing between CSOS and EAB where the one saying CSOS is accountable for managing agents, and EAB is saying.
Yeah, Caroline, you very well said, and I like the passion with which you speak. I really appreciate that, and I know that there've been lots of discussions about the EAB and CSOS, and 100% right. Professionalization is key. I'm going to give 2 more people the opportunity to briefly put forward, because we're already over time. But I know this really brings out people's wanting to chat about the subject. So Aubrey, you've had your hand up. Would you like to? Lovely to see you.
Thank you, Marina. I just want to add on to what Caroline said, and we all know that there's a lot of different areas in which managing agents should be knowledgeable, and unfortunately we find very often that managing agents make decisions and advise trustees on aspects that they know very little or nothing about. And the problem is that once the managing agents have given information to trustees or owners, it's very difficult to convince them of the real facts around it. So the advice is just, from our side, we obviously deal with the buildings and building plans and sectional title plans and stuff. If you don't know, get the proper information from somebody in the know. We just make everybody's life so much easier if the information is given correctly from the start, and not later having the he said, she said, and trying to convince owners that what the managing agent told them was not correct. A bad example we had is a managing agent that told a group of trustees that if you can't see the building from the street, you don't need building plans. And that is the type of information that is so negative, and it's possible to get the information. That's all I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Aubrey. Thank you. Lovely to see you as well. Is there Rudolph Kroch? I'm not sure if that's the right person, or if they wanted to say something.
Yes, I just want to thank everyone. My problem seems so small now that I've listened to them. That's all. I had a problem. It's sorted. I'll contact Shirley Bailey directly. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Rudolph. Thank you so much. Right, everybody. I think that brings us to the end. We've had a lot to chat about, and understandably, there are concerns and worries from both sides. But I think mainly the bottom line is that both trustees and managing agents need to make a conscious decision to make the relationship work. It's like any other relationship. You have to work at it, you have to build it, and you have to trust each other, and hopefully find the correct fit. So in August, we have Women's Month. We're looking so forward to seeing you all at Women's Month, and we're going to be welcoming in the ladies of the Community Scheme Ombud Service. We're going to come and speak to us about their hopes and dreams and challenges. I think it'll be a good one. We're going to have a lot of prizes. If anyone is interested in donating prizes, obviously we would publicize whoever that is. And we're going to have a lot of fun. So from a chilly Johannesburg, take care, keep warm, and thank you so much for your support. It's really, really greatly appreciated.